I've taken all of my text and I've moved the name of the shape and its description into individual text boxes. And I want to make sure though that I'm keeping the name of the shape and its description together in a single text box where I'm treating that as a single unit. So you can see I've got all 12 of those here on the page, and now I need to get them into a position where they align correctly. Now yes, I could get out my calculator and I could pull down guides and I could try to align these using that. But again, I'm trying to teach you how to be more efficient with this. I want to teach you how to do this in a way that makes you faster. So I want to show you what I can do right now. Now, right now, I know that I have the space within the safety area to be able to space these out. And then I know I want them to be evenly spaced in between there. So what I'm going to do first is just align my top row here. And I'm going to align them to start setting up the spacing of my columns. If my text boxes are all the same width and all the same height, again, this is going to be a lot easier. So I really recommend that you do that. And then we can make some adjustments to the text based on what actually is going to look best when we're done here. What I'm going to do first, though, is use some alignment tools here. So the first thing I need to do for the moment is unlock my guide layer. And the reason for that is that I want to get this text box right up against my safety area. So I'm going to select them both. And rather than moving it and hoping it snaps into place, or even doing like I was showing you before by selecting it and then trying to change my reference point here and moving it to where the y-axis added up to what it was supposed to right here, all of that's possible. But it's a whole lot faster to just select this box and my safety area, and to then choose to make my safety area the reference point. I do that by, after I hold down Shift and select them both individually, I let go of Shift and I select this box again, and you notice how the outline on it gets a lot thicker. I have just made it what is called a key object in Illustrator. And if I do that, then I can come to my alignment panel. Again, there's several ways to get to it. If I come to my alignment panel, you see here now I've got these align to options. And I can align to my selection, or I can align to my key object instead of the page. And what I want to do right now is align to this as my key object. Now, something that's interesting to me is that that bounding box is showing up. Oh, okay, it's just showing up because of this text box. Now, with my safety area selected as my key object, it's going to remain fixed, and any alignment options I choose are going to align as relative to this key object. In other words, this text box. So what I can do with this text box selected and my safety area box that I created selected, and then selecting it as my key object, is that I can then come to my alignment tools and align these along this right edge. And my box is just going to snap right to that position to where this edge is directly on the safety area. So I can do that again over here with the circle or oval, the first one that I put in there. So again, I'm going to select my text box, and then I'm going to Shift select my safety area, and then I'm going to release Shift and I'm going to click my safety area box again. And then I'm going to align this time on the left horizontally. So now these are both aligned exactly with the edge of the page and the safety area. I'm not crazy about them being that close to the safety area, but we're not really getting a lot of space in between right now, so I'm going to do that for the moment. The next thing I'm going to do is select all 4 of the text boxes that I want to have on this top row. And this time I'm going to make sure that I'm aligning to the selection. And what that means is I'm aligning these amongst themselves. And this time, instead of trying to do any alignment, I'm going to distribute. If I click this distribute buttons, what it's going to do is it's going to distribute in the space that these outer 2 objects take up. So this edge and this edge creates the boundary. But now I can distribute these on center horizontally. And you see how each one of them then takes up the middle space and is spaced evenly throughout. Now personally, I feel like these are a little bit too close together still, so I might have wanted to make those boxes just a touch more narrow, but I'm going to work with it for now. The next thing that I need to do is get it to where, according to my diagram, these are all aligned across the top. And by having these all in the same text box, that makes that a lot easier. So what I can do is I can select each individual text box and then choose one as my key object. In this case, I'm still going to need to move them to make room for the shapes that go above them. So for now, I can select any of them as my key object. I'm going to go with the first one. And now when I click Align Top, all of these are going to move, and this one's going to stay fixed, and they're all going to align to the top of this. So I'm going to choose to do that. And you can see now I've got these all spaced evenly across the page, and they're all aligned across the top. From here, I could choose to do the same thing that I just did as a function of review, but actually having these in place is going to make it a lot easier to align these others as well. You can see I've kind of got them close to where I want them to be. So what I could do now to achieve my alignment horizontally here is I could select each text box that needs to be in a column together, straight up and down. And if I make the one that's already in position my key object, then I can just align each one of those on center to the key object. And this is going to go a lot faster than even what I just had to do with distribution. Again, this is only going to work if your text boxes are the same width and height, by the way. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit trickier. But you can see now they're all aligning, on center as far as the columns go. So now I just need to align them across each row. So I can select each one. I can choose any of these as my key object, and I can align across the top. And now you can see my alignment is pretty good. I still need to work on my distribution just a little bit. I need some room between this top bit of text and these to be able to place the shape. And then these are probably going to need to come fairly close to the bottom. So what I could do now is take each one of these, and now I have a choice again. So I could realign, or I could group these and start to treat the column as an individual unit for my purposes here. Either one's fine. Right now I've still got my guide layer unlocked, so I'm going to select the longest bit of text here. It doesn't matter, I could select any as long as they're the same height. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to select my safety area. And then I'm going to release Shift and I'm going to select my safety area again to make it a key object. I can see that because of the little key icon in my Align To right here. And now I'm going to choose to align to the bottom. And what that does is it pulls this text box all the way to the bottom where the safety area is. Now I can deselect, come back, and select each one that's in the column here, or each one that should be in this row, excuse me, and select the one that's already in position as my key object. And I can choose to align them across the top or the bottom. Since this text is supposed to be aligned across the top, I'm going to choose the top, but it shouldn't matter because they're all the same height. So now with this entire row in position, all I really need to do now, I can now lock my safety area layer so I don't move it. So I'm going to come back to my guide layer and lock it so that I can't select this anymore. And then I'm just going to click and drag from the bottom right to the top left to select all 8 of these other text boxes. And I'm going to click on one and hold, and I'm going to hold down Shift while I do this. And that's going to move these down, but they'll only move straight up and down. They won't move side to side. And so that'll keep me from getting them out of position. And I'm just going to move it to where on this top row, I have enough room for a shape to go there. So about right there. The truth is this text is going to need to be resized. It's just a little bit too big. But for now, if I can get this top line where there's room for each shape, and if I can get this bottom line to where it has used all of the available space, then again, I can distribute these evenly. Now I could distribute each one and then align, because it's really just the center row. So if I were to select each of these text boxes in this first column and make sure that I am aligning to my selection, then I could use this distribution tool here and have them distribute on center, and all it does is it moves this center one into the middle of these two, so there's the same amount of space in between them. And then I could deselect, come back and select all of them in this middle row, select that one that's in position as my key object, and then align them across the top, and now they're all in position. So I could put shapes in here, but again, the text is a little bit big, so I'm probably going to want to do some adjustment here, but I at least have room for them. The benefit of having style sheets for this now is at this point, if I realize that this is not quite enough space, I have some choices I could make. I could make the text smaller. I could reduce the leading. I could also change, the width of the text boxes and the height of the text boxes. I just need to make sure there's enough room for the text in each one. And some of them are getting kind of right towards the edge of that, but there is a little bit of space left in each box for these. So I have some choices. I think what I probably want to do is reduce the leading a little bit so there's more room for the shapes in between. And so now that I've got style sheets, I can make that a really easy decision. And this is where you start to see the benefit of having them. As long as I've applied the same style sheet to each of these description paragraphs here, instead of having to change each individual one, I can just open up my P style sheet, come to my basic character formats where my leading is, and I can just reduce the leading. If I make sure my preview box is checked on, I can actually see the changes in real time too as I'm making the adjustment. So I'm going to come in and just reduce my leading a little bit. 14 is a little tight. 15 isn't bad. That gives a lot of extra room for the shapes, and really the shapes should be, front and center. But the text also needs to be legible because the shapes are more distinguishable from a distance than the text. And then I could potentially, if I liked having more space in between these, I could reduce my point size a little bit. That starts to create a little bit more breathing room in between them as well, which is kind of helpful. So I could potentially come down to 12, in which case I could bring my leading back up a little bit. That starts to look better. There's still some breathing room there once we see the poster. We're going to want to print this out one way or another before we finalize our decisions on the typography. But as far as on the screen right now, it looks okay. I'm going to come to my hyphenation box too, and I'm going to make sure, at least for my paragraph text, that hyphenation is turned off so it doesn't hyphenate words indiscriminately. And so now I have a little bit more space here. There's a little bit more breathing room. The only issue that I have is that it looks like there's more space for each shape, on these two rows than there is across the top. So I might want to tighten this up just a little bit, but overall I'm in pretty good shape. So no pun intended. So I'm going to move to the next video and I'm going to show you how to create the shapes and get them in position.